Hello and welcome to Let's Get Tender, Money Conversations That Matter. I'm your host, Marlene Elizabeth. Whether you've been in business for a while or you're just getting started with a new exciting idea, you may have heard it said that you are in business for one reason and one reason alone: to make money. Because without money, there is no business. And yet, have you ever found yourself as an entrepreneur trying to balance that fine line between business being all about money and yet at the same time feeling like the services and products you provide isn't just about the money? Well, if this is you, you're in good company. In today's episode, you'll meet a beautiful, heart-centered spiritual teacher, entrepreneur, and author of 9 amazing books, including her latest one, which has been just released just yesterday, hot off the press. So get comfy and get ready for a rich chat about the energy of money.
Welcome to Let's Get Tender, Money Conversations That Matter, a video podcast series with certified money coach Marlene Elizabeth, with amazing weekly guests who share their inner challenges, personal triumphs, and inside tips and strategies so you can prosper, lead, and love bravely in business and life. So get comfy and get ready to grow money wins.
I am super excited to be talking today with my beautiful guest, Christine Agro. Welcome, Christine, to Let's Get Tender.
Hi, Marlene. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Oh, me too. Me too. Before we get started, I want to share a little bit about who you are with our viewers today. So Christine Agro is a spiritual teacher. She's a clairvoyant, and she's a noted physical and metaphysical authority. Christine promotes practical spirituality that is rooted in our day-to-day lives and that facilitates real and positive change. Christine has been featured in the New York Times and Vogue Japan. She's been seen on The Late Show with Seth Meyers and Animal Planet, and she's cited in several books. Christine is also author of 50 Ways to Live Life Consciously, 8 energetic tools, and 42 concepts to help you wake up and live. And she's actually working on her 9th book. It's right around the corner from being released. And this book is called Awaken and Grow, a practical guide for your spiritual journey. And this, as I mentioned, this book is due out on November 6th. So welcome, Christine, again to the show.
Thank you so much.
So Christine, so tell me, what is your first memory of money?
My first memory of money. I think that it has to be, like when I think back about money in my life, I remember myself as a child wanting a Barbie doll and moving into this space of not asking for it directly, but feeling like I needed to almost like massage the situation, not being honest or truthful, which is really interesting about my desires and my wants. And I've thought about that whole experience when when you gave me an idea of what we were going to be talking about, and how we get programmed very early on about our relationship with money. Like I find it really interesting. And I was thinking about how I see my son do that sometimes. And I always say to him, just tell me what it is that you want. And if we can do it, we'll do it. Rather than having this sort of dance around it. So I would say that's my first memory of money.
And this experience that you had of not being direct about it, would you say that earliest memory of money is something that you later noticed became a limiting belief that operated kind of in the background as you were trying to pursue your financial goals, or maybe there was another limiting belief that came from a different experience that, you kind of started realizing was preventing you from reaching your financial dreams.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think um, money, for my work, it's I'm always looking at what are we working on, how are we working on it, how does it show up in our life, and I find that money it's kind of like the final frontier when you're stepping into spiritual awareness. Right? It's like the last piece that we actually have to work on, and remove all of the preconceived notions and the pictures and the programming that we have in order to really step into the place of full alignment. And if I look back over the years at my relationship with money and the pictures that I had, there's actually several that were challenges for me. And I think I definitely grew up with the axiom or the paradigm of you have to work hard and money doesn't grow on trees, and those sort of notions that that to have money was difficult or challenging. I know that my parents experienced some financial challenges, not in our day-to-day, but more in their investment space. And that had a bit of a ripple for me that I saw come up in, as I was creating my own business and doing my work. And then, of course, I have the challenge of, as a spiritual teacher, I am guided consistently to look at my purpose and the spiritual aspect of what I do and not the money side. And so when we live in an environment or a society that is really kind of money driven, that brings up some really interesting pieces.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I share that space with you in terms of being on this planet in such a way that I've always been compelled to develop my spiritual self and even just see the world through a spiritual lens. So I hear you. And that's kind of what kicked off my journey, because I find that sometimes when I meet people that are like-minded in that space, or even creative people that really operate more in their right brain, there's sometimes can be this disconnect from money and the real practical tool that it is for us in our lives. So I share that with you. And I want to share too with viewers, in case you're listening to this interview and hearing how quickly that we're talking about recognizing the beliefs that are going underneath the surface of our life. Just know that, it does take work. It does take time. It does take that discernment to be able to do this. So it isn't just an instant thing, because these beliefs operate in an unseen place where we don't even know that it's going on. So, so Christine, what kind of brave action steps did you take then to kind of overcome maybe one of these limiting beliefs that, kind of kept you stuck for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I love the term brave action step. I would say that my process has been more um, stepping into consciousness and seeing the things that come to the surface. And the way that I work with things is to really pick them apart to see what are they made up of? What, again, I keep talking about pictures and programming. So a picture is this, I think you would call it would be the limiting belief, right? So I talk about it as a picture. And the programming is this sort of, loop or imprint that gets put on us that something has to be a certain way, but it's not really our truth. So my process has been more about unraveling all of that. I would say that there's a braveness in it, in the sense that my process is to just step off, and I don't hesitate, right? When I see something that needs to be shifted, I tend to not have like a fear of like, well, what's going to happen if I do this, or how is it going to work? I just do it. And I talk to my students about ripping off the Band-Aid, right? It's like, I just rip it off. You know, there's no pause, there's no hesitation. And, you know, there's some good to that, and there's some challenging to that, because I think in the challenging aspect, sometimes it is like ripping a carpet out from under you, where everything just sort of, you know, falls up in the air, and you have to wait and let it settle down. But you know, these days, at 20 years into what I'm doing, I'm a little bit more adept at that process, so it's not so chaotic. But early on, it was pretty chaotic. You know, when I decided to leave my my profession and step into this work, because it really was something that was calling me, I just did it. I didn't do it with a safety net. I didn't do it with a knowing of where I was going. I just left what I was doing and let the course take its, let it flow. And yeah, it was a challenge.
Yeah, you know, what strikes me about what you're saying, there's two things that come to mind. One is when you talk about this brave step of just, you know what needs to be done and you do it. What comes to mind for me as I hear that is this sense of kind of obedience. And I know sometimes that word isn't the best kind of word, but it's the closest that I can think of at this moment, because sometimes when we're called to do something, we ignore it and we just kind of, you know, and then it only gets, I think, well, I know you'll talk more about this, but it's kind of like that knocking. Your life is knocking on the door, trying to call attention to you to shift and change. And you just kind of keep ignoring it, and it just keeps getting worse. And or the experiences and the challenges just continue to crescendo. But so I love this idea that you say that, you know, you listen. It's just, you listen. You're being asked to do something, and it may be scary, but you still do it, and that's the brave piece of it. So I love that. And the other thing I noticed too, Christine, earlier, is that when you're talking kind of about the unraveling with the belief, you know, I kind of, and your work around awakening, is that being able to kind of limiting belief and programming is more about just remembering who you are and remembering the truth more than kind of battling against it. It's more just a letting go, letting go, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we can see it that way, it definitely, and that is how I approach things. I think it makes our journey so much easier. I always say, rather than seeing something as like this big bad something that we're pushing against, to really see it as an opportunity to learn what it is that we're trying to learn, and learn it, right? That's the important part, is to learn it. Because there's so much energy wrapped up in when we see something as trying to squash us or trying to stop us. We actually end up engaging the energy, and flow happens when we choose to not engage it, when we step back into our own space and simply look at it and say, what am I working on here? How do I learn it? And how do I move forward? Right? It's just it's a completely different space.
Yes. And I think this is a real core aspect of money work and any type of work. So I'm really excited later on in the program, you're going to be able to see where you can get Christine's book, because she talks so much more about this process and this awakening and letting go and the receiving. It's fantastic. So Christine, now, what would you say that is a belief about money that really empowers you in your relationship to money?
So I have, where I operate from is a knowingness that what I need is always provided for me. It's always there, whether it is, and I try not to focus on exactly where it's going to come from. That allows things to continue to flow, and that's part of what I was saying about this challenge of being being in the spiritual world, but also living in the physical realm where things are money oriented. I find for myself, if I focus on the money piece, I do get dragged down. It doesn't mean that I ignore it. And it is such a fine balance, right? I mean, I check my bank accounts. I think that's really important. I have a firm grasp on what's going on money wise. I have a money sense, but I just don't put all of my weight and focus in it. And I know I was looking at energy about a couple months ago, I guess, and found this really beautiful piece for myself and for, anybody who works with me. And it was unraveling our notion of support. And what came out of it for me was that money actually is support. Money is something that allows me to do the work that I do, because I have my base, my clients, that allow me to have a living, and then I do all of these things that are free content and open source so that a lot of people can access it. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have the money support, that piece there. So I think if I was to look at right now, what is an underlying philosophy that I have, it's money equals support, or support equals money. Either way, it's an infinity loop.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that when we're able to see money more as that support rather than it being the sole focus, that's what I think really helps us to move forward in this territory that's really bold territory. And as I always like to say, when we're having these money conversations that matter, it's because we're talking about so much more than just money. So we're talking about, if you have that financial base, you're able to reach so many people with this good news that you have, and this message about being able to be awakened and living awakened in our life. So beautiful, Christine. So what lesson then have you learned? Because you're in business, you just mentioned, you work with your clients, and so you're a female entrepreneur. Are there any lessons that you've learned by being in business that you see that you can apply to your relationship with money?
Um, that's a that's a big question. Any lessons that I've learned that I can apply to my relationship with money? Um, I mean, I would say, and I think I touched on this already, but I would say that it's so important to not ignore your money space. I think a lot of times, especially if we are more in a heart-centered business, we just want to do what we do, and we can be uncomfortable with the money space and the money piece. But I think it's really important not to ignore it. I think it's important to embrace it and make peace with it and understand it as like I said, as the support piece, as an important part of what you do and how you bring your work, your message to the world. I think it changes everything when we come from that place. So I right now I would say that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's so helpful, because I know that, when you're taking this daring step to shift out of your 9-to-5 job, even if you just keep something 9-to-5 part-time, but then you want to brave these waters of entrepreneurship. And so you get here, and then you start realizing that maybe you don't really have such a great relationship with money. Maybe you're not even sure what that even means. It can be something like that, or it can even be just something like, in my case, I know when I first started in entrepreneurship, I'm a very independent person, and I've always operated that way. But I learned that when I became a businesswoman, I had to start learning how to work with teams and allow myself to be, like you said earlier, supported in ways that allowed me to focus on my genius zone, where I'm really good at, and let other people do tasks that I'm not so great at, but they love to do. And so in that way, but those are just kind of some simple ways that being able to be in business, we can kind of start learning those lessons and then applying those to our relationship to money. And Christine, what would you say, what have you learned about money that you wish you would have known when you first started your journey, your professional journey?
What have I learned about money? I mean, I do think in a large part it is this piece about, and I mean, it might, I don't know if you're cringing when I say this, because I know that you work with people in their money space. Um, but for me, it really is about this balance between focusing on it or not focusing on it. I think sometimes we think that money will solve everything, right? If I had this, then it will be okay, or like then I'll be able to do this and this. But I think that when we see money in that way, it actually, we put our power in money rather than being empowered. And I think if I had to, if I had to look at that, it's really how money is such a huge teacher, right? It's such a huge teacher for us, about what we're working on and how we're working on it. If we're using it to validate ourselves or trying to push ourselves into a place that we're not ready for yet, you know, and then we can get ourselves into a debt space because the flow isn't there. I mean, there's just, it's such a rich learning space. And maybe that would be it, is that money is such a great teacher, and we should really be paying attention to how we react and interact with it, because it tells us so much about what we're working on.
Yes, yes. And I completely agree with everything you just said. I think that that's exactly what drew me to this space, is because it has been a teacher. It has been a teacher. And, you know, by being able to look at money differently through a different lens, we can really live in a different way than we've been living in struggle. Instead, we can live sort of in this grace. And, you know, I have this, when I talk to people about money, I know that the groups that I talk to, usually they're in front of me, they'll be kind of feeling this angst and the pain and the suffering that can come around their money challenges. But I see it as a grace, because sometimes we can ignore all these symptoms in our life and kind of keep surviving through life. But money, if there's no money there, you know, we need to stop and pay attention. And so I see that very much as a grace, you know. And I was going to say too, Christine, earlier you shared that you're a clairvoyant. Can you explain a little bit about what that means?
Sure, sure. So for me, when I speak about clairvoyance, how it shows up for me is the ability to see things at their energetic state. So I'm always looking at what is the energy of something. So if I'm looking at money, I'm really looking at it from an energetic perspective of what is wrapped up in it, what is all tied up in our notion or concept of money. And how does that affect us? And then what are we trying to learn? And most importantly, how do we shift it? Because I think that's where people get stuck. They don't remember to do the shifting part. They see the information, they understand it, and they're like, oh, I've got this. And they forget to do the work around it. And so they're just amassing knowledge and not actually having the growth pieces that come with it. But if you think about, so clairvoyance means clear seeing. It's a French word. And if you think about our senses, we have the ability to see, we have the ability to hear, we have the ability to feel, and all of those senses have energetic aspects to them. So when somebody is clairsentient, which is clear feeling, or they are clairvoyant, or they're clairaudient, they're raising the vibration of their ability to physically understand those energies and get them at an energetic level. So that's how I explain it. And I think we all have access to it. I don't see it as anything necessarily special. I think my gift is the way that I interpret it and the way that I help people understand through it. That's what I think my gift is. But I think most of us have some sort of clair, something that we tap into. Typically, typically for people, it's the clairsentience where they're feeling things, right? They have a gut instinct or an intuition or a knowingness. The claircognizance is knowingness. That's the fourth one. So I think people tend to tap into it. They just don't acknowledge it or they don't recognize it. And I just own it.
Well, and so tell us more then. Tell us, Christine, how can people find you if they want to learn more about perhaps working with you around maybe their money challenges, but in a way that's really from a fresh perspective, as you're talking about here, or even how they can maybe just learn about finding where to buy your book. Yeah, share that with us, please.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So my website is awakenandgrow.com. So that's a great place to start. And then the book, you can find it. There's a website for the book. It is awakenandgrowbook.com, but it's going to be available on Amazon starting tomorrow, the 6th of November. We're doing a special launch. You can get it for $1 US. For the first between 24 and 72 hours. We're not sure how long it's gonna last. So I would say, grab it at the very beginning. But you can go to Amazon starting tomorrow and get it there. Please wait till tomorrow though. I just want to ask you to wait till tomorrow. Just let's get the energy like moving and going. But it's a really, I really see the book as it's the culmination of everything that I've been doing for the last 20 years, but it's your place to start, which is what I really love. It talks about our awakening and what that experience is like and how you can understand that. And then the grow part is what our growth is actually like and what it looks like and what we go through, because there's some very specific steps we go through in our growth. And when you understand them, you can just be like, oh yeah, I get this. And then putting it all together are just some tools and insights into what you can do with the information. And because I'm all about experiential, when you get the book, there's a link for you to download a lot of little mini classes to help you actually step into this stuff fully and completely. So I'm so excited about it. And I appreciate you having me here, Marlene. Thank you so much.
Oh gosh, Christine, thank you so much. And we're super excited. We'll make sure to have the link you can see on the bottom of your screen and Christine's website. And thank you, Christine, for being here. And congratulations on this fantastic book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Really.
There was a time when I believed that you couldn't be spiritual and wealthy. It wasn't possible until I started challenging this long-held belief of mine. And I started instead asking myself the question, well, what if I could be spiritual and wealthy? Well, that question triggered my brain to start looking for evidence to support that statement that I can be spiritual and wealthy. Before long, the image of Bill Gates came to mind, this multi-billionaire who has put his powerful resources to work in his work in Africa. In his words, his focus for money has changed to getting the resources out to the poorest in the world. I also thought of billionaire Oprah Winfrey, a spiritual woman with tremendous wealth who shares it in abundantly creative ways, such as her Leadership Academy for girls in South Africa. 3 years ago, it dawned on me, what if I could bring together the worlds of money and spirituality and call it financial spirituality? I mean, did a concept exist like that? Well, to my utter delight, and after a fateful Google search, I discovered this little book published in 2007, the same year that my daughter was born, called Financial Spirituality. And it was written by a gentleman named Bill Rowland. Bill Rowland is a financial advisor, and he's also worked as a pastor. And so his unique experience gave him this opportunity to bring this perspective to spirituality and finance. And so in his innovative book, it's just filled with new ways of looking at old problems around our relationship to money. Above all, his financial and his spiritual perspective finally helped me to get very, very clear and understand without a doubt that the truth is we can be spiritual and wealthy if we so choose to be. And as Bill says, finances at their core are a spiritual matter. In fact, this is the concept that's at the heart of my book, Money Wings, and this show, Let's Get Tender, because finances begin at a very, very deep place within us. In fact, I take my private one-on-one clients through a process of rebuilding their financial belief system in a way that works for them, one that helps them to make better decisions and to take action and to follow through. Everything starts to make sense as their relationship to money becomes deeply meaningful beyond just the physical dollars and cents of finance. This often misunderstood area of our life can finally get the attention that it deserves. There's a saying that money is neither good nor bad. It simply reveals our character. Well, to echo Christine, money is such a great teacher for us. I encourage you to take advantage of the very, very special limited time offer of purchasing Christine's book or even just sharing it out to your community. Her book is called Awaken and Grow, and it's available for only $1, and the link is right here on your screen. You can purchase that book today. It is available for the next 24 to 48 hours at that very special rate. And I look forward to seeing you at our next show. And thank you so, so much for tuning in.